hemp conference. We had a great hemp conference this last week. Some of you guys were at it remotely on the go there last week, and then we followed that with our in-person, which was incredible. And these two folks that are in there today, being Ira and Aaron, really amazing. We're able to be up here on White Earth at our hemp conference, and we really enjoyed that. So I'm just happy to be able to join you. He and I are here. We can't be at a computer. We're on our way to a public hearing because in northern Minnesota, we want to put up a big OSB plant, oriented strand board, super dirty, bad idea, dirty dealings. And there's a public hearing in the town of Cohasset tonight. So we're water protectors, and we're gonna go up to this hearing tonight and be heard. So anyway, we want to wish you the best. We're gonna check in and out, but I want to say that I'm really grateful to Erin, who we've been working with at Fiber Shed, and then now at the Lift Economy, for all her knowledge and commitment to the fiber arts and to all kind of fibers. I never really thought about it, all those things, until I started hanging out with Erin. And she's been really instrumental to Winona's Hemp entire organization and thinking about different options in fiber economy work, and also in the mystery of trying to find out
pull that shit out, okay?
how to make fiber, or how to make fabric from hemp. And that's his mystery that she's been working on, or how, you know, it is made. And then Ira, my great friend and compañero on this work of reclaiming the fibers. You know, grateful to have both of these folks in the house to talk about their work. And he is from Dene community, and they are transforming the fiber economy down there. So welcome to class again. I'll be in and out. As I said, we're driving to a hearing. But thank you, Aaron, and thank you so much, Ira, and Lucille, of course, for being in the class. Me and E, we're in.
Ira, are you open to kicking us off? You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yay.
Am I on?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Winona. Good luck at the hearing. Hey, E. Nice to see you. And so I'm in New Mexico, in San Rafael, next to the Turquoise Mountain here in New Mexico. We just drove back. We got stuck in a big snowstorm in Denver, so we just barely got home. I think we want to continue on with talking about fiber, especially some of the stuff that we discovered and talked about at the hemp conference as well. Aaron and I have been working really hard to try to get the market going again for fiber and fiber blends from the indigenous perspective. So I'm going to talk about it from that side, especially from the Navajo side. And then I think we'll do about an hour or so, and then hopefully we can open up for questions and discussions. My affiliation with the fiber started with the Navajo traditional weaving. We had a really big breakthrough when we were able to do a blend of the churro wool as well as the hemp. So we started playing around with Winona's hemp, and she gave us a bunch. We are able to decorticate it, which means separating it, the fiber from the hurd by hand. We found the application of water and heat and air and sunlight. We were able to degum the fiber, which means that we're taking the pectin out of it, which is kind of like an oil, I guess you could say, out of the fibers so that we could work with them. And we actually received some seeds from Clem and Dabney, because what we were doing is also cleaning the soil. So our love for the soil, we've been trying to clean it up for a long time, but out of just removing it or pumping water into it, nothing has been really effective. But what we notice is the hemp grows extremely fast, especially with very little water here in the Southwest. And we were able to use the hemp to pull the toxins out of the ground. And then when the toxins were pulled out of the ground, we were able to put the stalks into a process to where they were turned into a biochar type of material. And biochar is what happens after the hemp and the stalks and everything is burned, and it's turned into a char that can be put back into the earth as well. So we're also discovering a lot of stuff from the hemp conference, especially using the waste from decorticating and weaving, taking it through a carding process, using these old traditional Navajo carding tools. We've been using this to kind of like really work the fibers and pushing them through this process. We were able to make them into a really fine type of material. And then we were like, hey, that looks like insulation. We can use that for insulating the walls and the ceilings and things like that. But also what this is called is a batting. So this batting is created after running the stalks or the fiber through those carding tools. And you can also use it for bedding for animals, or if you get it clean enough and fine enough, you can also use it for bedding for humans and pillows and things like that. So the uses of the hemp fiber have just taken off, and I really want to encourage the class and anyone who's working with hemp to really look at the difference between growing hemp for CBD or CBG or oils, the medicinal purposes or consumption purposes, versus growing these fiber strains. So just like everything else, there's different seeds, there's different genotypes that go with certain areas. We're in the Southwest, so we needed a plant that could adapt to very hot and harsh climates, which include wind and sleet and things like that, but also something that could stand up to very strong or without like a drought type of area. So we needed something that with very little water, that could grow with very little water. Out here, our hemp stalks maybe grow 5 feet in height. And then we try to cut them before flowering. The flowering happens after the hemp stalk matures and comes into a flowering process. And that flower is where the CBD, CBG are extracted. Also where, you also could use that for any type of the medicinal foods and those kind of things. The seed that grows on them is a part of the hemp herds, what people are in the hemp hearts, which people can eat, or if we get into the flowering process, it goes into a whole nother realm. But we cut it before the flowering process, and then before it flowers, and then we cut it down there. So down here, we're able to get 2 cycles. We start in putting it in the ground, directly into the ground, in May, middle of May to late May. And then within 90 days, we've got our 4 to 5 feet tall stalks, and then we can replant and then have a second cycle, which means 2 crops a year. And what we found, the amount of carbon that's taken out of the air per acre is with the hemps is around 4 tons of carbon that comes out of the air. So not only is the hemp taking the toxins out of the ground, it's also bringing it out of the air. And it's such a special plant that it's taking those in, and we're working on a genotype that not only can take the toxins in, but can also neutralize the toxins by the time that they get to the leaf. So those are really, really important aspects of what we use it for. The herd and the hulls that are left, or the herd that's left over, we use also for hempcrete. So we don't use hempcrete per se down here. It's more of the adobe bricks. So we mix the clay, the stalks crushed up with water, and we also use the ash, ash from the fire, which acts as a lime and a bonding agent for the bricks that we use down here. So there's if you take the hemp directly off of the stalk, this is how it looks, and this is all by hand, and it's kind of messy, but then it comes through this process here. With this one, we card it, and then it gets to this point here, and then from here we are able to take an old Navajo spinning tool. So this is a spinning tool that you can see is really long, and it sits on the lap, and the process of taking this hemp and twisting it up and twisting it up and twisting it up over and over again is something that the Navajo have been perfecting with wool. We just put hemp in there, and then you're able to get the strings of the wool into a yarn type of deal. And then from the yarn, the next process that we take is another cleaning, another washing, and then we stick it into a dye. This one is dyed with dogroot, and the dye is we stick the hemp directly into boiling water with the dogroot inside. We like to use indigo dye. Indigo is our color, but this is something that comes out. And then after this, we get into the onto a Navajo loom, and it can be woven into a textile. And the benefit of the Navajo, this is, you can see a loom here, and the benefit of the hemp with the Navajo rug has been tremendous. The first thing is these pieces right here, they're called the warp, and the warp is what holds the entire rug together. And the hemp is gazillion times stronger than natural wool. So by using all hemp on the warp, we're able to strengthen and increase the quality of each rug. And because of it being the hemp fiber being a silicular fiber, which means it's a little bit hollow on the inside, there are properties of it being water resistant and also fire resistant. So not only is the durability and the quality increased in the rug, but it can be used for multiple things. For example, this one is a medicinal piece, so that's going to be used for placing instruments in a ceremony. Feathers, arrowheads, crystals, things like that are put on here, and those kind of things travel around with the medicine men. It can be taken into different climates, different places, and you really want something strong to hold those medicinal pieces. So what we've learned on the Navajo reservation is when we're creating this economy, we want to do it by hand first, and have the cottage industries. We wanted to work with the fiber. We wanted to see what it could do, how diverse it could be. And one of the things that we've noticed is the waste. So we wanted to have a zero waste process. So we take all of the carding stuff, all of the yarn left over, all of the wool left over, and we place it into a bag, and it's put into a 3D printer filament machine. And out of this comes the 3D printer filament. And if you guys know what the 3D printers do, they're able to print out anything. You can print out screws, nails, knobs. What we would love to do is to do cell phone chargers, those kind of things. Anything that would hold like a battery or a case. You can do a home if you wanted to, a house. So the combination of this rug is all hemp on the warp, and then down here we experienced a huge problem in the last 2 years because the wool buys were interrupted by COVID. So a lot of the economy of the wool buys and the ranchers and farmers around here were hit hard. Nobody wanted to buy the wool because they thought it would be contaminated. So we bought up all the wool from all of the farmers and decided to marry these two fibers, the wool, churro wool of the Navajo, as well as the hemp. And when we put them together, it was just an amazing marriage. So we're hoping that all of the excess wool that we can buy up that is churro, and all of the hemp that we can buy up, we can continue to make these products. And just for an example, the weaver that we first engaged, he's a master weaver. His name is Roy Cady. He was selling his rugs for $2,000, $4,000 pure wool. We did the first hemp rug wool blend, and he sold it for $12,000. So you can see the huge difference, almost $10,000 the market is willing to pay in the difference of using hemp wool blend rather than just wool, because of the durability, because of the look, because of the water and fire resistance that's inherent to the fibers that are there. So I think that that's how we got into it. We really want to encourage everyone not to jump into an industrial revolution to where hemp is produced in a very toxic or a bad way. We want to do it in a way that that will allow us to be green, be sustainable, have zero waste, and environmentally friendly. Because actually working with hemp and the wool, we found that we need the 4 elements. The earth is the hemp and the wool itself. The wind dries the wool and the hemp while we set it out. The sun here in New Mexico is amazing. So we have the solar heat applied to it. And then, of course, the heat and the fire and the air and all that kind of stuff together creates this amazing chemical reaction that takes the oils out of the hemp, and then we can work with it very easily. We want to be able to create a circular economy to where the quality is not just the dollar value of the hemp. Here on Navajo, our crops have been devastated by drought, by federal regulations, limiting the amount of livestock you can have. All of those things have taken away the ability to be self-sustainable, to have our own flocks, to have our own crops, to grow our own stuff, and to make something out of nothing. But this hemp is giving us a chance to do that. So my sister, my grandma, my aunts, my daughter, everybody's getting involved to where they're in the process. And the main thing is we're getting seed in the ground to where people are outside in the gardens. And then on top of it, we're taking old traditional techniques of dealing with wool, spinning it, carding it, weaving it, that have traditional songs, that have traditional Navajo language attached to it. And the kids are learning it, and they're associated, and they have the time to do it with my aunts and my sisters because they're able to make money off of each rug that allows them to stay home and not be stuck in a 9-to-5. So that part of the value of the process is what we're looking at. We don't want to make anything easier. We don't want to make anything in a way that it's going to take away from that process. I just saw the down below, does anyone make a basket? We will be making baskets out of them. It'll be a combination of the willow we will use the willow and twist it up, and then use the yarn and the hemp wrapped around the willow. Yes, similar to using willow. So the main products that we have right now are saddle blankets, horse cinches, rope, twine, and the Navajo blankets is what we've created. But eventually we can get the yarn pretty thin, where we can start to make textiles. Where Winona's got a new goat farm, so we'll be integrating the Angora, and that mohair creates an even softer blend with the hemp that we can get into clothing and textiles that you can wear as well too. So I'll stop right there if there's any more questions. Aaron, you can jump in right here if I missed anything on that side, but this is more of a testimony. The technical questions I can answer as well too, if you'd like.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Ira. That was really amazing. There were a few questions that I tried to answer in the chat, but it might be helpful if you would elaborate. So folks were asking, the very first question was, what happens to the toxics that the hemp has taken up once the hemp is made into biochar, and how is the biochar used? And I shared a little bit, it depends on the toxic, but do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, we've got a huge catch-22 and conundrum. So like we want to take the toxins out of the ground, but then you burn them, they go right into the air, the atmosphere. Then you bring the toxins down from the atmosphere with the crops as well too. So we're trying to balance that, but the toxins are released into the air. We want to use the biochar. One huge biochar use is the ultracapacitators. The Jose LaSalle, who will be teaching later on, has created an ultracapacitator that needs that biochar, and we'll use the biochar within that. The biochar is also used to replenish the soils quicker, and then a fertilizer. It goes back into the soil and can be used to regenerate the soil in your crops or your land where you're at. But the use of biochar is really, they're starting to create a whole bunch of uses for it, and batteries and a type of soil complement is the main ones.
And this is the benefit of having a collective group here. Tara is saying, what about using some sort of air stripper of some kind when you make the biochar to capture those? The other thing about biochar, just I've noticed that there is a way, if you build the biochar correctly. I don't know if folks have actually witnessed a biochar fire compared to like a regular campfire. If you build it correctly, the idea with biochar is that the heat at the very top, you actually can sometimes light it on the top with biochar. And so the heat at the top of that pile is actually so hot that it will combust any of the volatile organic compounds before they go into the air in the form of smoke. So if you build a biochar right, ostensibly the idea is that you have a very smokeless fire. So you're not actually letting any of those compounds go out as smoke. But obviously there's so much nuance there, but I love the idea about the air stripper.
Yeah, that's a great idea. My problem with mass production of biochar is there's one in Longmont, Colorado, and we did do a visit over there, and it was 10,000 acres of this huge mass factory. And I'm like, oh, this seems kind of counterproductive and not exactly, do the ends justify the means is what we're looking at there.
Yeah, absolutely. So one other question that came up, Ira.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Kim, and then we'll go back to the chat questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not, it's hard to type. I can't read that small writing. I'm at that age and stage. So I have a a more general question. First of all, excellent presentation. Thank you so much. You just made it seem more real and possible in my world. I I'm not a gardener. I'm planning on buying some land next year, and I want to grow some hemp, and not for any type of commercial use, but for more personal experimentation, learning, and honoring relationship to the earth itself in the region that I live in. I live in Southern Ontario. And so in listening to all of the things that you shared, and I don't know if I missed this or if there was a bio sent ahead of time, but I was just wondering how, like, what journey did you take to get to the stage you are of learning? Because I've registered for this course, but it's only 6 weeks long. Like, I need to do way more learning than what's going to be able to be offered here. Did you take a course yourself, perhaps that we as a group could look at? Or did you just do a lot of personal research, or did you have a mentor who actually walked you through the process of learning? Because I know you drew a lot on tools from your cultural background. Um, I don't come from a community of weavers. I'm an Anishinaabe, and so we have weaving, but it's we don't I don't have that to draw from personally. But I'm just wondering, like, how you got to where you're at, because the level of experience you have, what you have shared with us, I think is an area more in tune with the focus I want to have personally with hemp moving forward. So I'm just wondering the how-tos. Is that a clear question?
Totally, totally. No, what you're saying is exactly right. There's there's one thing that I always say to people is like, you just got to get started. You just got to put a seed into the ground. And
Yes.
this is probably recorded, but I don't want to get arrested or anything, but I just did guerrilla farming. I just went out into the places where there was uranium contamination, where there was ditches and arroyos, and I just threw the seed into the ground. And it's amazing that plant will adapt to that area. You really don't even have to water the ones that we have, and they just grow just naturally because the plant wants to integrate. It's been around for millions of years, so it's been through the dinosaur era, it's been through the cold freeze era, it's been through every kind of revolution that the humans have thrown and war has thrown at us. So the plant is really adaptable and it's really durable. You got to find a good seed for your region. Up north, you wouldn't necessarily use the same seed from New Mexico. So that's the basis of what I thought that I started with. And then I just started growing it. But what helped was attending Winona's Hemp and Heritage conference. And her farm brought together the most amazing and beautiful minds in the entire world. So I did that 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I don't remember what the first one was. And then this past year was the second one that I attended. But just by attending those conferences, you meet the most beautiful minds. And we call ourselves hempsters, right? Like people who are into it, and you just start learning, you start asking questions. And the relationship with the land is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to get back to the land. We wanted to get our kids into the mud and dirt, learning how a seed grows. And there's nothing better than hemp because you don't really need to babysit it. The fiber kind, I mean. The other one, you do have to have a greenhouse and soil and blah blah blah, this and that. This kind that I had, I just threw it in the ground and got going. And that's how I got started. And then of course reading and writing and doing stuff on my own research was it. But the best thing is just to stick that thing into the ground, have it come out, and then see what you want to use it for. And we were good at weaving in our family, so it was a natural transition to integrate
Yeah.
into that.
So very helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Totally.
Thank you, Kim. And Ira, we have a beautiful question that just came in from Margaret in the chat, and you're just the person to respond to it. There are hand, decorticators. They are much smaller. So the question is, Ira, what tool can I use for decortication if I want to plant and harvest a few hemp plants this summer? It seems always, these huge machines, but my father grew up on a hemp farm, so I assume we use a sickle. So can you talk a little bit about the decortication at the scale you're talking about?
Totally. So decortication is the separation from the fiber from the stalk. And we found that it's really easy. If you're going to do less than an acre, you can do that by hand. And by hand, the best thing to do is to allow the fiber to sit and lay after being cut. And it's called a retting process. And the retting process allows that fiber to separate on its own, and it'll be outside. And if you turn it over, let's say it's 4 days, you're allowing it to ret. Take 2 days, flip it over, let it ret again so no mold gathers on it. And then those fibers will start to separate by itself. And we found you can use a little nail and stick the nail inside of it, pull it down, and then the whole fiber will separate by itself and you can slip it off. But last week we were working with Eve, the girl that was in the picture with Winona at the beginning, and we built a decorticator. It was just a by hand one, simple one out of wood, probably like $100 in material and labor to get it done. But it has a chomping process like this, and you pull the fibers through, you pull the stuff through, and it'll separate it by itself. You can make one of those on your own, and all it is two pieces of wood coming down from the top, and then one on the bottom to where it's like this and coming down in this motion. And then you slow, like the problem with decorticating, people were getting those machines and they're going and being very violent, and you don't have to if you got if you let it ret and then you add a little bit of water on it because you don't want the fiber to separate, then you just slowly and you can pull it through, and then you pull it through again and then pull it through again, then you'd have this clean fiber right here. And then from there you can use this carding tool to turn it into whatever you want, to the batting or whatever. And then at the bottom you will have all of the herds, so all of the fiber will come out with your hand. All you got to do is hold on to it. So it's a decorticator that's a hand decorticator. We don't have it here, we left it over there in King in Minnesota, but we would recommend that one starting out with first, or do it by hand. You can separate them, and that's what the Hmong people do. That's what the Asian people do, just by hand. And it's fun sitting there. We're all sitting in a group, have some tea and some food, and your whole family just does it, and your kids can do it, and your mom can do it, and you can just decorticate it on your own, and you can just pull the fibers apart by yourself. Does that answer your question?
So helpful. I hope, Margaret, that was helpful for you too. So there was one other question in the chat that I'd love to have your thoughts on, Ira, and it was around the carbon sequestration. Someone was asking, how do you measure the carbon sequestration, that 4 tons per acre? And I kind of responded that, that's a general figure that we use, and obviously it depends on the growing practices, but I wondered if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, the 4 tons is a very, very, very low number. It's the lowest number and the safest number to throw out there. My buddy Clement just told at the and then somebody else at the hemp conference that it could be up to 8 tons, 10 tons per acre, or something really high like that. So I think the science behind it and the papers behind it are a little bit vague. But how you would measure that amount is from what I did. I didn't have and do the measurement by myself. I just did the research and went off of somebody else's paper of how much they had taken in. But the science behind it, I imagine it had to do with measuring how much was in the leaves and the stalks from the carbon from the air. But the problem with that is it takes out so much out of the ground too. It's like it's mixed with a lot of stuff, so the numbers can be skewed a little bit. But I just got that number from actually it was 6 to 8, but I just say 4 just to be safe, depending on people's crops. And it also depends on how tall, how flower, how many leaves, or how big are the leaves, how spaced apart they are. The fiber I grow is really close together, so we don't get a lot of leaves on the side. They just look like really tall bamboo type of deals as well. So those might be less carbon taken out than say one with large leaves and a big old bush a tree type of stature.
Amazing. And Kim, thank you for this question. There's a request from the class to share any pictures of the decorticator that you have innovated and built, Ira. And so maybe you could work with Lucille to get those uploaded into the Moodle at some point.
Totally. We took some videos too of it, and then working it in the pictures too. So E was going to take those pictures and send them over, or send those pictures over when they're ready.
Great. Well, any other questions for Ira? I could speak a little bit about sort of how we've been learning from the artisan scale to think about Winona's hempire kind of scaling up and growing things that are, you know, processing to create shirts, for example, on a sort of a more less bespoke scale and a little bit bigger scale. And someone's asking, Ira, how can they reach you directly for further questions or support ideas? So maybe drop your link in the chat or how they should reach out to you. Okay. Any other questions for Ira? If they come up, we'll get them as this course evolves, as the journey goes on. So feel free to keep asking questions. And if you have questions at any time for me, just pause. I'll be checking the chat as well. So it's so inspiring to see all these folks that want to grow hemp kind of on a small garden scale. And I'm also really curious if you are thinking about growing hemp on a scale that might be on an acre scale or an acre plus. So feel free to drop that in the chat if you are. What we have noticed, so my name is Erin. I'm calling in from unceded Ohlone territory, actually in Northern California. But I've been working with Winona and White Earth and Anishinaabe growers for the past like 3 or 4 years now in this vision of a cooperative. And so I'll share just an image really quickly to kind of depict what this cooperative could look like in terms of how a cooperative could function and what it would mean for hemp growers to work together to create a different economy. So as you all know, Winona has developed a number of sister organizations that support the larger vision of a just transition, the green path that is prophesied in the Anishinaabe prophecies. And one of those entities is this Aking that has the Eighth Fire Solar and a number of initiatives. And so Aking as a nonprofit, the vision would be that Aking could cooperatively own a new hemp cooperative where 80% of that cooperative would also be owned by hemp farmers. And that hemp cooperative would then serve many functions, but one of which would be owning a larger scale decortication and mill facility whereby each individual farmer would not be responsible for doing all their decortication themselves, but they would sell their raw stock to the cooperative. The cooperative would be able to decorticate it, and then the farmers would get a dividend from that decortication of that fiber and would be able to recapture more of the value. I'll stop sharing just for a moment. One of the dynamics we have in so many of the food products, so many of the clothing products that we use on a daily basis is that the farmers, the people growing the wool or the people growing the seeds or the people growing the fruit or vegetables, the farmers are often the ones that get the least amount of money from that value chain, right? The grocery store, the distributor, all these middle people get so much more value and profit off of the labor of the farmers. And so Winona really has this vision of transforming that dynamic and making sure that the farmers, the ones that are actually growing the foundational input that the whole value chain is reliant upon, gets more benefit and gets the value that they deserve. So that's the first component. Now, in order to get there, we have done a tremendous amount of research. So I'll share my screen one more time and show you that one of the, oops, let me get out of this first. So one of the dynamics is that, as you all know, decortication has been a pretty big dilemma. I'm trying to find the report that I wanted to show you.
Erin, while you're
So,
looking for the report, sorry, it's
yes,
Kim.
please,
I'm not putting my hand up because you're looking for something, so I'm just speaking. Sorry.
please. Great.
Would this co-op be um, uh, inclusive of Canadian partners, or is it just
Oh,
for American partners?
such a great question. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for stopping me and asking that question. If at any point folks have questions, please do what Kim just beautifully modeled and stop me at any time. So that is a great question, and I am not sure is the answer. One of the things we're looking at is what is the range or distance to transport the hemp that makes it economically viable or economically feasible. And so we imagine that, you know, a range of 2 to 4 hours from the decortication facility might be feasible. But the longer term vision is that we would have these types of decortication facilities in every bioregion of Turtle Island, and that they would really be creating these bioregional local economic generators of clothing and fiber needs and canvas and all the things that we rely on for textiles, for fabric, could be generated in each of the different bioregions. So we could have one in Ira's community, in the Diné community. Okay, so that's why, you know, Winona's work to, and all of you on this call being connected to communities of growers is such a beautiful vision. And ideally, we could model it in one region and really bolster one region to test it out, try it out, troubleshoot, iron out the kinks, and then be able to replicate that model elsewhere. And so the hope is that we can try it out in northern Minnesota, and then all of us can benefit from the learnings associated with that. So you made me think we should talk about lots of other stuff, but very quickly, I'll just mention, so this was a life cycle assessment that was produced by Patagonia, who's been studying the hemp industry for, and you can see it's like 62 pages. So I'm just going to scroll to the place that's most relevant to all of us. They found that the area of concern when we look at the processing of hemp, it's not the growing. Hemp farming is a good, a beneficial impact to the climate. Dew retting is beneficial. Decortication is kind of medium, and degumming is the place that is the most highly toxic generally of hemp that we currently buy today. So hemp that we're getting today, most of it is coming from China, where they use very caustic processing. And so what we landed upon is finding a partner that has an ecologically benign or ecologically invisible process to turn that woody hemp stalk into soft fiber through their degumming process. And that partnership has been Renaissance Fiber, and we're currently working with Renaissance Fiber and Patagonia on a commercial pilot where 2,000 pounds of the hemp that was grown by Winona's team, Ronnie and Darren and the whole team at King and Eighth Fire grew hemp, and we then have decorticated it through the through a kind of larger scale decortication facility, which is not currently in northern Minnesota. It's currently in the south, in the southern part of so-called U.S. And then it will go and be degummed and then go through Patagonia's industrial supply chain. So spinning and weaving, and then go to a cut and sew factory. And so by spring or fall of 2023, we hope to have a product that actually integrates Winona's domestically grown hemp into a product that will be in the hands of consumers, and folks can actually feel the hemp that was grown. And what's important about the commercial pilot is that it will pave the way for a proof of concept that will allow us to secure more resources to actually build a hemp decortication facility on White Earth, and in Winona's region, and in the land back acreage that that Winona has been able to secure. And the other reason we've chosen to work with the Renaissance Fiber Partnership is that when we did an analysis and an assessment of all of the decortication companies that were out there, their processes are by far the most affordable. So there's other decorticators that we are looking at. We are looking at Formation Ag's Fiber Truck 660 as well, which may have the capabilities to produce decorticated fiber. Unfortunately, Formation Ag has not cracked the nut on degumming. So there's these two steps that you all now are very familiar with, because we've said those words a lot. The decortication is breaking the fiber from the hurd, and the degumming is actually using either mechanical or chemical processes to break down the lignin that remains in those fibers, and soften it so that it's ready for spinning. And I'll just show some pictures of the fiber that Winona's hemp has produced. So it's very, very soft. I wish you all could touch it and feel it like we did at the conference. It's going to blend beautifully with wool once we get to that point. And it's just very, the Renaissance Fiber team said this is by far the highest quality hemp they have touched anywhere, from any hemp that has been sent to them. And we've also decorticated some hemp from Iris community as well. So that'll come soon as well. Before I go on, I'm just so curious what questions are coming up for folks, or what more you're interested in learning about regarding the textile applications of hemp. Okay, I see Margaret. Oh, go ahead, Kim, and then we'll catch Margaret's question.
Sorry, I'm completely green and new, so for those of you that are experienced, please forgive me for the very elementary questions. But degumming, when Ira was talking about the process that he went through, I must have missed the part about degumming. So I'm like one of the, I think it's like Margaret, just looking to grow a test patch this year, and to explore. I'm interested in the fiber hemp, and making the machine. So in terms of the degumming part, to actually be, do you degum before you get to the
Get,
carbon process?
do you want me to answer, Aaron, or
Please.
you got it? Okay. The degumming process is actually, the way I was trying to describe it was applying the heat and the water, and then soaking the hemp in there. What we've used is ash. So the ash from the fire acts as the agent that will help degum it. And then we add a little bit of beeswax into that boiling water. So the beeswax helps keep those fibers together as well. So in the boiling water is the ash and the beeswax, and we soak the hemp in there. And then we take the hemp out, and then we let the hemp hang and dry on a tree or a clothesline or whatever. And then the sun and the wind together here in New Mexico does its thing, and the chemical reaction slowly starts to degum the fiber. And then we do it again. And it's actually 4 cycles that it goes through into that solution of the beeswax and the hot water and the lye, and then taken out and then hung, dried, and then put back into the same process 4 times. And that is how we degum it. And it's 0 chemicals. We use the ash from the fire being the
Oh no, you just muted, Ira. Here, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
unmute. Okay. The ash that we use inside of the solution is actually the hemp that was burned before. So we use actually the same hemp and the ash from the hemp, and then put that into the water as well too. So there's zero chemicals involved in our degumming process. Right,
So
son?
is there like a ratio of how much ash and beeswax to water to quantity of hemp soaking, or
Yeah,
is this just
we do it like we make fried bread. It's kind of like this handful and throw it in there, this handful. But usually the pots are about 5-gallon pots, about 5 gallons of water, maybe a handful of the ash type of deal, maybe a cup of ash. And then the beeswax is very little, maybe half an ounce or so, whatever you need to do. Not that it's too greasy and things like that. But the beeswax does help whenever you're drying. When the hemp is drying on the line, it tends to break apart or crack or make the fibers a little weak. So the beeswax helps bind those fibers together and keep them together while they're drying in the drying process.
so
But
when it's degummed, is it a feel, you know, by feel, or is it a visual thing, or is it a combination of the two? Like, how do you know it's actually degummed?
oh yeah, totally. It's definitely a feeling. It'll be softer. It will also be a lighter color, especially from down here in the Southwest, being out in the sun. It'll get bleached by itself, and normally that's what people want at the end anyway. So the bleaching process is also natural too. So the color changes, the texture changes once the degumming happens.
Me catch, thank you.
And then, and since we're zero waste, the water after being degummed, the 5 gallons that are still in there, that goes into the adobe brick solution. So you got the clay, you got the water from taking out the degumming process, and then you've got the hemp herds, and it goes right back into the adobe bricks. So they act as a bonding agent too. So don't waste anything. You don't have to. You can use every single thing.
Got you. Thank you so much, Ira.
Totally.
Margaret had a question about the degumming. Are we working with researchers like the Cornell team? And just one response right off the bat, Margaret, is that in our experience, we haven't found that academic research institutions are very they're not looking at commercial applications, right? So the research that's being done is at much like smaller, plot scales. And the big issue to solve for is, right, how do we replace the currently very toxic processes that are happening every day all around the world in these larger companies and what they're doing. And we haven't found any academic research institution that's working on that. Even Rodale Institute, which is the report I put in a couple times ago that works on organic innovation and how to grow hemp organically. They didn't know anything about the next step processing for textiles. So we came in and we helped educate them about the degumming process. So hopefully that helps. But if you have people that you're connected to that you think would have insight onto that, we'd be happy to connect more. So I'm just scanning.
And she's totally right too, Erin. This process of the artisan stuff, we need to get our SHIT together and start to collect data and to write those papers and to really have a position on producing zero waste, zero chemical process. And we've got to get our butts in gear and really start to write our own papers and to talk about our process as well too. It's an artisan scale, but at the same time, it still needs to be talked about.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Okay, Ross is asking if you can talk a little bit more about the weaving, making a rug or saddle blanket and the process there.
Sure. This idea of making a rug and a saddle blanket is an old tradition, and we use the traditional Navajo. No blurs. There we go. The traditional Navajo loom. I've got it blurred in the background. I think that's the problem. And this loom is made out of wood, and it's I gotta unblur my background. But let me unblur my background really quick. But the idea of creating it all happens on the loom. Okay, there we go. None. Okay, and this loom is a traditional Navajo loom on a small scale. So each one of these, the strings that are vertical are the warp strings, and those warp strings are what bind them. And each yarn is placed into these strings, and a design is made using those tools. This is the real one that we were doing at the conference, the larger scale one that gets a design and processed from the weaver. And what we're working on is that each one of these designs, these age-old designs, just come from the weaver's brains and their minds and their hearts. And we want to work on not patenting, but yeah, I guess patenting those designs that we can turn into some sort of on a blanket, or in I saw in the back of Kim, or whoever was who was asking a question, you had a beautiful blanket in the background. We want to be able to use these designs on them. So I guess the main thing that Ross was talking about was the whole process. And the first thing that happens is the decorticating, the separation of the fiber from the stalk. And then we go into the degumming. We only degum on the fine fibers that we want to use. You don't need to degum if you're making a saddle blanket or ropes or things like that. You can just jump right into the process going into carding. And the carding was those spikes. We bring them through those, and then we create the batting. And then from the batting, you have this spinning tool, and then that is used to make the yarn. And then from there, the yarn goes into these looms. Ross, maybe you can show your loom, which is created extra as well. And we talked about the two tweaks that we will make to it to create the tension needed to create a larger saddle blanket. So or a horse cinch. So a saddle blanket will be made on the same loom as a rug, but a horse cinch would be probably a third or a quarter of the size, and it's only a strip of the loom. So it'd be skinnier, and it would be like maybe this section here in the middle, and then the warp would only be put into the middle.
You're gonna kick in? I got it up right now. I don't know how to kick in the video on yours.
Cool. Ross is making a special loom for us. We had him make some tweaks and size adjustments to it. And that's the whole innovation about it. All you students and everybody out there should be thinking of new tools and new technology or old technology on how to produce, process hemp. This is wide open market. So the whole engineering behind it is huge. Ross was able to create this thing, and we can make horse cinches with this.
I'm gonna go from front to the back, but yes, I can turn this into a thing of beauty.
Okay.
So this is the first one, okay? It's all tweaked, warped, all that. If your cinch is the whole way across, that's gonna this is a huge pressure point, as you can see. If you look at this real close, that's a huge pressure point. This is a huge pressure point. So on the new one up top, I took 5/8 inch rod, kicked it through this whole thread, okay? And the backside that. It's gonna work great, but I keep hearing about these plants. So, well, what are you gonna do with the plant? Nothing. How do you turn your plant into something that is worthwhile to humanity? I mean, because I've been listening for a bit here, but it says, how do you grow stuff? Like, okay, well, what are you gonna do with the product? I mean, you come with the product, because if you got nothing but the Navajo, on what you've done on a scene on the loom side, which I'm still trying to collapse yours. I got to figure it out basically, but you have a beautiful product made out of 100% natural, organic, grown and decoordinated and strung up. Like you guys are going through a huge process that you can commercialize. And
That's
just
right.
make it easy with robots.
That's right. And that piece you have there, Ross.
Original, and you're doing it all by hand. I've seen the process it takes to do that little tiny loom, it looks like, that you guys do.
Yep.
It is amazingly difficult, very hard to do. And it takes an artisan like Tashina to do it. And then your sister Shay, that takes an artisan to take a plant that you grew in your property, decord it, rip it into fibers. That takes so much time and effort, and also patterns. And all I hear about is people want to grow a plant. Well, I can grow a plant outside, but what am I going to do with it? Just burn it up later.
Yeah.
Unless do something, you're doing nothing but growing another plant. I got grass growing outside. I mow it with a lawnmower. It's a weed. I got to cut it down. You're taking hemp and turning it into a work of beauty that you can hang up in your house, put it on the floor. It's beautiful. When it comes to your artisans and the Navajo, I've never seen someone like you guys that can take a plant. I watched a little bit. I don't talk a whole lot at all, but you take a plant, bust it down. You built at Winona's. I know it because I helped a little bit, not much. All I did is run screws. But you build something that you can decode it with without using gas.
Yep.
No, none. It was all straight up hand power or battery bolt. There is a huge, huge market in this on what you can do. And I want people to know that it takes an artisan like Tashina to take a plant that they do themselves by hand and turn it into a work of art that you can show other people that you're proud of buying. That's why your costs on your product is so high. You are taking a plant and turn it into beauty you can show off.
Yep.
Ross,
That's all I
thank
want.
you
That's
so
all I
much.
want.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ross.
Ross, and the idea too is that loom you made, we talked about the adjustments that have to be made to deal with the hemp, because the hemp is so much stronger than the wool and the yarn.
Oh,
So reinforcing looms,
I couldn't break wool.
strengthening looms, doing all those things, that's artwork too. You created that loom out of nothing, and that's a part of it as well. We don't have to be able to weave, we don't have to be able to do whatever, you can make the machines to decorticate. And you saw that, you were in there. We built a decorticating machine in 3 hours. We put it up and we fixed it up just out of scraps that were laying around. So I mean, this is a beautiful plant that's wide open. The market is open. Just let your mind free and work with it.
I wanted to tie this in a little bit too to why Winona is tackling textiles first, from the standpoint of how to drive economic sovereignty and self-determination in her community. And because as many of you who were at the conference know, there's food applications for hemp, there's building applications for hemp, there's so many uses. There's the 3D filament and 3D printing. And so one of the things that we learned in doing a analysis of all the different applications is that right now, consumers are willing to pay a premium for clothing in a way that they're not willing to pay a premium for their food, that they're not willing to pay a premium yet for housing. The pricing right now for those hemp wool blocks is pretty unbelievably low. And so hard to build a sustainable revenue source for farmers on those components of the industry right now. And so starting with textiles gives us that advantage of price premiums that that then can drive revenue and return back to the region. And of course, it's definitely not all about money. I mean, as Ira is so beautifully reminds us, we need to build a different type of model for cooperative business that's not solely reliant on only financial capital, but leverages social capital and ecological and health and community care. But one component of that is being able to have money to support people with livelihoods, and so yeah, that's just another aspect of the market that Ross, I think you brought in, and I wanted to highlight in case it's useful for folks. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but I'm curious if there are other questions coming up or folks that would want to learn a little bit more about any of the aspects we've touched on. Folks can feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question or put it in the chat.
I'll jump in if I may. I was the one who asked about the nitrogen fixing. I don't know if that's this part or you're getting to that, but I'm interested to know about how it treats the soil. Thanks.
Sure. And who was that? Just so I didn't.
Elisa.
Elisa. Yeah.
I'm waving if you have your videos
okay.
up.
So one thing I put in the chat, and Ira, I'm curious to hear you add to this, was that in our experience, Winona's team, who has grown hemp now for at least 5 years, our experience has been that hemp, the plant is actually not a nitrogen fixer like peas or legumes or other plants like that, and that it in fact does take a good nutrient conditioning in the soil. And so our experience, the team has actually chosen to go with beneficial soil amendments like composted poultry manure, CPM pellets, and other ways to boost the fertility of that soil and boost the nitrogen for creating a really vital and vibrant hemp crop. That being said, you know, the other advantages of like hemp can grow without any irrigation whatsoever really makes it an ecological beneficial component of an integrated farm. But Winona's team is looking into other locally sourced nutrient amendments to make sure we're replenishing the soil, because the hemp does feed a little bit on those soil nutrients. And Ira, feel free to add.
Yeah, we also found that it doesn't necessarily put nitrogen directly back into the soil, but what it does is it acts as a very good rotation crop. And for some reason, it does put something back in there, but takes mostly a lot of the stuff out that is not needed. So it does put nutrients back in, not as much as we would like, but as a rotation crop, we would put it, actually, at the beginning, we put it in with the corn crops. So we were trying to hide it from the Navajo Nation government. So we put it in with the corn crops, and we found that it was doing a lot of things besides helping the soil. It was an insect repellent. The bees loved it. We had bees around, so the bees were there. A lot of the pollen was being spread around. It also, we put it in front of our where we had our crops in our land, because around where we're at is a lot of abandoned uranium mines, and we're using it as a deterrent. So it was blocking and sucking up a lot of the toxins that may have been coming from the rain falling on the uranium abandoned mines and flowing towards our gardens. So it was acting as a deterrent and kind of a protective shield against toxins that would be coming in. But we put it in with our corn and our squash and our beans, and they worked very well together. So there's the three sisters, the corn, the beans, and the squash, and the fourth sister is hemp. So it's a good one to throw in there. The hemp and the corn and beans and squash work very well together. So there is nutrients that it does go back into the ground, but it's not as much nitrogen as we'd like. So having those other plants in there, and that's the whole beauty about this plant. It's marrying very well. The fibers are marrying very well. The blends are happening with wool and mohair very well. It's the same thing as in the garden. Don't be afraid to throw it in there with your corn and your beans and your squash. Just put them all together and see what happens. That's what we did at the beginning. And that's when we weren't worried about cross pollination, or we didn't have specific seeds that were growing for something. We just threw them all together and see what would happen. So it acts as a very good rotational crop and does put nutrients back into the ground. Nitrogen, we're still kind of looking at that. So.
Yeah, and irons to build on that, the weed suppression trial that Rodale did, we are very interested in continuing to, and that would be a great thing for the folks of you that were farmers experimenting. I did drop that report in, and to grow hemp as a crop that's intentionally grown to suppress weeds, while you have another crop like a sorghum or a winter wheat or any other grain. That would be something that there's a lot of room for innovation in, because then you get 2 crops off of a field, and that can really change your unit economics pretty considerably. Yeah, and companion plants are good in suppressing, yes, bugs and reducing your pesticide pressure. Reducing your pesticide use and reducing pest pressure is a great point, Leanne.
Correct. Yeah, and I wanted to emphasize where we are, we're not growing it commercially on a plant. So we are no-till. We don't till the land. We just go right into the ground. So with the no-till system, the hemp has been really good in helping to keep the ground fertile.
Are there any other questions? Really wanting you to use this time to get the most out of your class. This is really for you, and it would be best if you share questions that are relevant to your setup, I think. Keep them coming.
How many years do you think a person needs to experiment with hemp to start maybe expanding to growing an acre or acres of hemp? I know that it's regionally dependent, but Ira, I didn't hear you say how long you've been doing it. I know that Winona's been at it for 5 years now.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 3, and we still haven't really gotten to the point where we feel comfortable going mass, being out there that long. But I can imagine the co-op accelerating everything on a good fast track to getting people faster and faster into the game and knowledgeable on scaling. The co-op, the thing that we have, and the biggest problem everybody here is going to have in Indian country or anybody in our area, is we don't have the tractors, we don't have the water, we don't have these the capital to really get started on a large scale, which is kind of scary. And that's why we're forming the co-op. It's a huge advantage for the small farmers like us to get in there and get the resources that we need to accelerate the process. But right now I've been in it for about 3 years, and I feel pretty good about where we're headed and where we're at. I would say those 3 years have been research and development. We're in the R&D stages. And then when we get to the point on what strains we want to do, how much we want to do, what we're going to use it for, when we get clear of that, then we wouldn't feel bad about taking it to a larger scale. So I think 5 years where Winona's at is about right. You really got to fall in love with the plant. You really got to make it a part of who you are. And just like your kids, these kids here, we've got to grow them the same way. So, son. Yeah. So I think
beautiful.
I look at it like kids, and I really want everybody who's involved with plants that are healing and have medicinal properties, or any plant in general, to look at it like that, to treat it like a child, to treat it as a member of your family, to love it, to sing to it, to pray for it, to use its pollen, to use every single piece of it, and not to waste anything. So as soon as you feel like you can get to that point where you can do that on a mass scale, then go for it. But I would say 3 to 5 years before you really get to understand the beauty of it and the complexity of it.
One more quick question. When you say you do research, you're doing your own research. Like, are you literally like taking numbers and are you using some sort of a framework for that? Or are you just doing observation and keeping track of that? And then once you've done that, are you storing it someplace for collective sharing, or is this just based on your own personal experience for your own, perhaps scaling up long term?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I've on my individual level, I was working with Clement Dabney from the University of Minnesota. So he was amazing. He sent us the bags. He sent us the instructions on how to do the soil samples from where we were at. We sent him different ones, and then he was like, "We'll try this one there. Try this strain from there." And then afterwards, we would send the results from the strains, and then we would tweak to work with him. And all of his stuff is going into his PhD project. I know some of you guys have probably seen some of that stuff. He's also the last class as well, week 10. So we can talk more about that research. But we've joined Winona's team. So a lot of our stuff going through the Patagonia process, Aaron's tracking that. And we've been able to use Winona's resources to help us out, because there's no way we can do what they're doing. Absolutely not. And we've been using them. And I think when the co-op is created, those are the kind of resources that people will have at their fingertips. But as an individual, definitely working with the universities, the pilot projects in your communities. There's probably a ton of them on hemp right now. You can jump on with one of them. But for us, I mean, we use everything from Geiger counters to, the soil samples in the labs that are probably sent from here to Minnesota have had some errors in them. So if you want to get it really fine tuned, finding someone local, what would be amazing is like a mobile type of lab that could go into the communities and test those products in the soil as well as the plants and everything like that.
So there's a couple questions coming up in the chat around Amanda kind of seeded this group of questions around seed sourcing. And so in Canada and in so-called US, there's obviously very different seed sourcing, but I could share a little bit about Winona's journey. And one of the interesting things about seed sourcing right now that George Weeblin from the University of Minnesota taught me about is that there's this kind of culture of it's frowned upon to regrow hemp seeds that from a strain that you've bought. But I'm really curious to know, like, is that legislated? Is that a regulatory thing, or is that just a kind of cultural thing? In which case, I think there's a lot of room for like seed sovereignty work, like we see in the indigenous agriculture movement around open pollinated seeds and seed saving and sharing. But one thing for folks that are interested in looking at what varietals you might choose, and I know there's going to be a whole other section from people that are way more experienced than I am, but to look at whether you're growing a dual variety seed or like a single functional seed. And what I mean by that is there are seeds that are called dual variety, and what that means is you can use both the stalk and produce a seed. And so that as a garden scale, that might give you more versatility in terms of what you choose to use your hemp crop for, if you're growing some for your own food production, as well as some for your own artisan fiber, making thread or rope of some sort. Winona's journey has been purchasing seed from many different sources, and then realizing she's really looking at having her own seed sovereignty, and so just purchased a whole collection of seed strains that then her team will manage and grow out and evolve and refine the seed productivity and relevancy to the bioregion that they're growing in, and hopefully be able to have those strains then available to the local bioregional hemp cooperative for in perpetuity. So seed sovereignty is a huge issue right now. There's a lot of innovation needed. And if you are interested in seeds, by all means, this would be a really, really great place to dig in, become a seed producer for your local community, and help open source and make seed more available and more affordable to folks wanting to use this amazing crop. Ira, what more would you add to that?
I like the dual purpose for maximizing what you can out of it. You can do the grain as well as the fiber. However, we try not to go to the flowering stage. So we have strains specifically that would be for fiber. The dual purpose would be good for anybody who's starting out, I think, and then you start to see what you really want to use it for. The Clement is very adamant. I keep mentioning Clement because the guy is a genius about working with seeds. And the idea that he has is that the seed, let's say after 4 rotations in your area, in your climate, in your ground, in your soil, it'll start to adapt and change. It'll start to move and create a new genotype, DNA, if you will, for the plant of that model. So what we've got is a huge race right now of people patenting and really saying, this is my kind of seed, this is what the seed is for, and it's a big rush. So what we've actually done is taken like a farrow seed, a wild hemp grown seed, and then start to mix it and marry it with something else, and then play with that type of genotype that you could. But I would definitely look for dual purpose strain if you can, one for grain and one for fiber as well, to start out with. And there's gazillions and gazillions and gazillions of strains out there that you can pick and choose from. And I think right now with Winona's team, we've actually picked about 71 different varieties that we're going to test. And it's a big test that's going to happen, and it's a big maybe 30 of the strains will fail. You never know. So we're trying to figure that out and what's going to be best for her region. And it's the same thing for you. I love it. It's so localized. It's so specialized. It's so a seed that you have to put into from your region, I think would be great.
Okay, so there's a couple other questions. Let's see here. Professor Carlos asked a question. Do you repeat a hemp farm in the same piece of land, or do you apply a crop rotation? Ira, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. We use it on the same plot. We're a no-till operation, so we just actually, when we kind of like the weeds, we let the weeds grow, we let the other plants grow, and that acts as natural fertilizer when it lays down in the winter. So we just leave it on that same field. I know that there's a lot of people who do the till system that do rotate the crops, but with hemp, you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, and Winona's team has grown it on the same plot multiple years in a row as well. Mm-hmm. So Ross is asking, in the next 2 years, how much will hemp be worth versus just growing corn or wheat? I would just say, one of the dilemmas with corn or wheat is there are still in so-called US lots of governmental subsidies for those two crops in particular, which is really a tragedy because it incentivizes growing practices that are not in service of people and planet. They're in service of profit. So, I think the unit economics is a really big realm of innovation that's needed, especially for folks looking to grow on the 1 acre or more scale. But hopefully many of you on this call will grow at the garden scale, at the home scale. And that, of course, that is, just as if not more valuable. And so I think, what I've learned from listening to Ira is really making sure that we're not bringing the same problems of consciousness that have gotten us into a lot of the issues we have with our current extractive economic system to this plant. So really like checking our consciousness and coming to it with in a good way is going to do a lot for the future of this plant and partnering with it rather than exploiting it. Okay, Ross is asking, can you elaborate a little bit on the decorticating the leftover chaff and how to turn that into the 3D processing, 3D filament process? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. We found, like, if you guys know what the 3D filament machine does, it takes biomass, you put it in there, and then it applies heat, and then it turns it into a filament, a wire that comes out, and that wire is put into the 3D printer machine to create anything. And you can create anything that would be with plastic, anything that actually tools. We could probably print Ross's loom out of a 3D printer and stick that together. But the process is, after you decorticate, you have the hurd left over, and you have a lot of little fibers. You got a lot of little sawdust. You may have some other things in there. All of that is on the ground, and we usually put a tarp underneath it, or we just sweep it up afterwards. And you can put all of that waste into a little bag, and then you can put it into the 3D filament where the biomass goes, and it can turn into a filament. I mean, you can stick in coffee grounds. You can have coffee ground 3D filament. You can have what we've found is the best is when we have the wool and the waste from the hemp, and we put that together, because the wool has natural lanolin, so you don't have to add any kind of binding agent for the filament. So you just take the waste and you stuff it into this machine, and the machine does the work for you. It converts it into that filament wire, and it's all the waste. It's just everything that falls off, anything that you can collect off the ground, stick it in together.
Are there specific kinds of 3D printers that can use that filament?
Yeah, actually, most of the hemp can go into most filament machines, because the biggest problem with the filament machines right now is that the PLA filament fiber that they use can get really, 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 really hot and heat up the machine and then cause problems. But the hemp filament burns at a very low temperature, not as high as the other ones. So it's very friendly to the other machines, the 3D printer filament machines. So most of them, mostly all of them.
I'm wondering, Lucille, if you want to very quickly share your screen, and I'm trying to get on my Moodle account, but I can't get onto it right now because I have to look up the password. But I'm wondering if you would want to share your screen and just show folks how to access the Zoom records on Moodle, or if you'd rather send them an email out afterwards about how to do that. There is a question about how to access the Zoom recordings.
Sure. I can actually just answer right now, because I think most of the students have already been familiar and gone into the Moodle several times, because what we're doing is each week after each recording, we upload it into a folder that says, week 1 recording, week 2 recording, week 3 recording, etc. So everybody that is enrolled in the hemp class has also a Moodle login. And if you need help with your Moodle login, I can definitely help you, and I'll put my email here. and I can help you all log into your Moodle. Most folks have contacted me independently, and I've been able to help everybody get in. So last week's class has not been uploaded yet. So if you're looking for it, it's not there yet.
Do you want me to share my screen to quickly show you?
Sure. And also, Amber's asking when the paper is due and where do you turn it in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I couldn't figure that out either.
Lucille, do you have a sense of that?
We have any papers due? So there's no homework that's required for this class. It's not a real graded course. This is in the Moodle, we have the repository where all the data is shared. So this is, you know, for all of our edification on hemp and all the different processes with hemp. So as far as I know, there's no homework due. If you love homework, I don't know, maybe Ira or Aaron can assign some, but right now we don't have any homework.
I had a quick question though. So for the assignment section, there's a couple resources with links on there. And I was trying to read those articles, but it doesn't really let you read it unless you sign up with the Tribune or something along those lines. It didn't like let me read those because I didn't have a subscription, just to
So
let you know.
some of our instructors have shared with us articles that for them, they may not require a subscription, but for others, they do. So if I'm able to get PDF copies of some of those articles from the instructors, then I can upload PDF copies.
Lucille, I have a hack for that, and I'll share my screen really quick. There is a website you can go to. I just put in the chat, Archive VN, and you can actually click it in, archive the content on that page, and oftentimes it'll get you behind those paywalls, or you can search the archive for saved snapshots. The other thing you can do if that doesn't work is your library often will have an account where you can actually search public scholarly journals through your library and get logged in. So that might be another way to do it. But maybe Lucille, I can help you if there are specific articles that we can kind of search behind the paywalls. I cannot stand that about our culture is so obsessed with putting knowledge behind paywalls, and it's really, really a tragedy. The other resource that I found on this is a website that you can click on, and any scholarly publication, you can put in the DOE or DOI, which is the descriptor, the document descriptor, and find any scholarly publication. You can get it behind the paywall. This is just a woman who volunteers her time to make science accessible and get beyond the paywalls. So really important that we share knowledge. We don't really have time to keep knowledge proprietary and behind closed doors.
Absolutely. And now that I do actually have my Moodle up now, so I can show you guys what I've created. I don't know. Let's see here.
While you're pulling that up, I'll just respond to Heather's question. In the Aking process, is there a plan or in place for the hemp bioplastic? And I would just say, there's a lot of tribes working on bioplastic. I know Sisseton has a plant, and Fred Briones with the his wife, Ade Briones, is with the First Nations Development Institute. So Fred Briones would be the one I would reach out to for questions about bioplastics. It's not currently a priority for Winona's team, but we obviously are really supportive of tribes that are focusing on bioplastics.
So when you log into your Moodle, hopefully y'all are familiar with this view here. And you can click the link, Tribal Hemp 101. Of course, on that front page also has the link, and on each page, I put the Zoom link for this class. On this side, you could see, you know, other online folks. We added a discussion board here. This is sort of a general discussion board. So anybody who wants to carry on conversations after the Zooms, you can continue here, add new topic, and just continue discussing. Also, within each week, here is week 1, and the recording is down here in this folder, as well as the assigned materials. And again, these assigned materials are not graded, and we're just putting this information, like Aaron said, continuing to share knowledge, as well as I've highlighted week 2's recording. As soon as I'm done uploading week 3, it'll be here, as well as week 4. And so if anybody has any questions accessing any of the Moodle content, you can definitely let me know, and I can help. And or if any of the instructors have more information to add, I can help with that also.
I have an assignment. What if, is there any way we could get everybody in the class, like maybe 5 or 6 seeds, and then everybody can put 1 seed in a pot and just grow it? Because it's now time to start germinating. And how about that?
Yes, yes, please, yes.
Okay, I've got a bunch of seeds. Maybe I can just get from Lucille everybody's address, and I can send some out to everybody, and just stick it in the ground or stick it in a pot and see what it does. Play with it, sing to it, those kind of things. That'd be a good assignment, right?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, cool.
And let's respect that a lot of people have traumatization from the word homework. So let's not call it that. Let's call it extra fun.
Cool. Yeah, no homework.
Well, thank you all so much. I guess if there's no other questions, we could end a little early today, and you could all kind of follow the path of curiosity that your mind takes you around these themes that we've shared. It's been such a joy hearing your curiosity and all your good work. And yeah, I will drop again my contact info in the chat. If there's any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out.
We appreciate you guys. We love you guys, and you're our hempsters now too. So welcome to the revolution.
Thank you, everyone.